Good evening, viewers. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Matthias Aufiku, news editor of the Namibian Sun newspaper. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Evening Review Show. Before we get into tonight's business, let's first have a look at today's headlines. Well, as promised earlier, it's another exciting show on the cards. We're joined in studio by the incoming ombudsman, Mr. Basilius Dyakugha. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Let me congratulate you
Sure,
on your appointment.
I'm humbled
Yeah?
to be the new ombudsman. And thank you for the congratulatory message.
Yeah.
And thank you for inviting me.
No, it's a pleasure, sir. Yeah. Can you perhaps just briefly take us through the journey that led to your appointment, from the day that you decided, I think I'm capable of manning this office?
Yeah, very good question. I joined the Ministry of Justice in 2007. And what made me to join the ministry is the advert that I saw in the newspaper. And it was in the Directorate of International Cooperation, which means I'm going to venture into international law and human rights. So for the past 12 years or so that I have been with the Ministry of Justice, I was tasked just to deal with the human rights aspect. And that time when I joined the ministry, there were a lot of outstanding state reports on human rights, treaty reports. And I was now thrown in there to rescue the situation. Yeah. So immediately that time, government was still well-resourced. I was sent out for training on state reports and shadow reports. And just in 2008, I was full equipped with the knowledge as how to do this work. Yeah. So then I started slowly producing these reports, presenting them to the various treaty bodies and to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. And that's how actually I get into knowing the area of human rights law. And in between, I also worked very closely with the very office, with the same outgoing ombudsman, because he had a couple of projects related to human rights issue. And when they wanted the ministry to get involved, they will always just delegate me to be the representative. And that's how I actually got to know their activities, what they do in the office. And not only inside the country, I also used to travel with him together overseas. He will go his own mission to attend from the NGO perspective. I will attend from the government perspective. But more or less, the meetings are related. You know, it's same subject. It's just that when you present it from the perspective of your office, and me, I will present from the government perspective. So the journey was really interesting, and I learned a lot until I consider myself as a human rights expert in human rights law and UN treaty system, the African Commission system, international law. So yeah, when I saw this advert, I thought, let me try.
Yeah.
The aspect of the former American President Donald Trump, you know, when he said he wanted to run for president, he didn't really mean it seriously.
Yeah.
But as the time went on, he realized that, oh, I'm actually gaining popularity and getting votes, so I'm going to stay and see how far it goes. So what happened is, when I saw the advert, I just said, okay, so what must I do if I want to apply? Because the requirements fit in my capability. I have the qualification, I have the legal requirement in terms of the Constitution, so the experience. So then they gave me the application form.
Yeah. The Office of the Ombudsman over the years has been seen as a rather dormant office that works in the shadows or in the background, if one may call it that. How do we expect the office to operate under your leadership?
Well, I think maybe to start with is to explain really the constitutional mandate and the legislation, the enabling in legislation that actually give the ombudsman its roles and functions and powers. The office actually is a public office to guard against the threat to our constitutional democracy and to the rule of law and good governance. So for the Office of the Ombudsman now is actually given that mandate to be like the watchdog. And then when you do that work, you only do it when you get complaints from the public. So it is not really an office that actually, in the eyes of the public, that actually actively or silently perform its duty. It performs its duty in confidentiality and independent and in impartial way. In other words, some of the work that they do there, it ends up not to be published because the client don't want the information to be published. But most of their work is published in their annual report, which they send to the National Assembly. And I think that is where the public actually are missing the point, that they don't see these reports being presented to the public in the libraries and the other offices where they can find the information and read what actually their work is entailing.
Yeah, because I remember one of the key concerns of your predecessor is the issue of the support for the office. Like you said, reports go to the National Assembly, but when they get to the National Assembly, what then? Do they just end there, or are the recommendations implemented? That was one of his key concerns over the years. How will you address that?
Yeah, there are actually two reports that we talk about when you read the Ombudsman's Act. The first report is where the public body did not implement the recommendations of the Ombudsman. That report can be submitted to Parliament anytime or to National Assembly. Actually, it's not Parliament, but just National Assembly. Anytime, to draw their attention that this particular public office or public official has not implemented our recommendation. And as you may recall, the setup of our government is that we have three branches of government. The National Assembly or Parliament, and then the executive, and then the judiciary. So the National Assembly have actually the role, the oversight role over the judiciary. And for them to do their work properly, they rely on the Ombudsman. And the Ombudsman actually feed the National Assembly members with that information through these reports we are talking about. So that's actually the setup. They allow the ombudsman only to report to the National Assembly, and they take it from there. Because National Assembly is the body that actually have passed the law, and they want to see that this law is implemented as it was intended. So if an executive member, like a minister, is not actually properly executing his mandate, the National Assembly has to know, they want to demand answers from that particular minister.
Yeah. So as an ombudsman, once you give your recommendations and you see that they are not being carried out or followed through, what are the measures that you think you'll explore?
Yeah, this is where the personalities comes in. Yeah, because the law everywhere, the practice everywhere of the ombudsman practice is just a recommendation aspect.
Yes.
We can talk about the reasons why they have designed it that way, if you want later.
Yeah.
When you make a feasible recommendation, because like I said, the primary aim of the ombudsman is actually really corrective and collaborative in nature, to strengthen democracy, enhance the rule of law, and transparency. So that's when the ombudsman makes a feasible recommendation, and it makes sense to the lawmakers that this, we have to take it seriously. I don't see any reason why they cannot really take that recommendation further, you understand? Now, what normally happens is, in the real life situation, is that for purposes of doing our work seriously, as an individual, you must draw the attention of the person that you send the report to on a particular issue. Because reports are sometimes voluminous. They don't have time to read these things, particularly those in those higher positions. They are saying they are very busy. They have too many work. So in my case, I think it will be another way of finding my way to implement my report is just to talk to the chairperson of the Constitutional and the Legal Affairs Committee, chairperson, to draw his attention that, look, this will actually, it is in your own interest for us to implement this recommendation. Yeah. Yeah, I think that way we will go far. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the reason why I asked that question is there's always been an issue of the political aspect of our governance system, whereby those who don't really, call it excess or who don't have the political muscle, often do not see their offices taken seriously. One such office is the office of the Auditor General, a key office. But year in, year out, the Auditor General's office submits reports to Parliament. They're just tabled, and it ends there. So every year, it's the same recommendations coming back again because the preceding year, those reports were not implemented.
You are right, because I think by when we started, these are all public institutions that were placed there to guard against the threat of democracy. And the other office is the Office of the Anti-Corruption Commission. So actually, in the case of the Ombudsman, things is now maybe now moving to a better direction. We have a bill that is actually under discussions. And the proposal in that bill is that the language in the current act must be expanded and make it more clearer. That once the Ombudsman tables his report to the National Assembly, that report must be tabled in the National Assembly for discussions and for their attention. So if we get far with that bill, then things will change for the Office of the Ombudsman. Then the Ombudsman himself, whether it is me or somebody will follow me, we don't need to go and negotiate further.
Okay. Yeah. The other aspect also, you are coming from the Law Reform and Development Commission. What do you think are some of the aspects that, legally of course, that they should be looked at to enhance the work of the office that you are about to assume?
Well, yeah, as you know, the ombudsman is an ex-official at the Law Reform and Development Commission. So his role there is actually to draw the attention of the commission on some of the laws that need to be changed or to be amended or to be repealed because it doesn't really go well with the constitution, with the current setup. So the current situation of the Law Reform and Development Commission is not really desirable because we don't have a full-time chairperson. A full-time chairperson is a very, very important position because this person normally gets instructions either from a State House or from the Prime Minister, and then because these two offices are actually the governing office of the country that want to change policy for the betterment of the people. So at the moment, this person is not there. So there is now a loophole there. There's a vacuum there where we don't really have that support from these two higher offices to the Law Reform and Development Commission. Yeah, I think what I hope for is that that position should be filled, and then we can have that support from the higher office.
So perhaps in terms of your immediate plans when you step into the office, what are some of the areas you would look at? I know you spoke about your background in the human rights field and so on. Namibia has been struggling with that over the years. We've seen the reports over the years that are highlighting or red flagging some of these issues in our society that pertains to human rights. What are some of the issues that you're going to look at?
Yeah, well, there is no country that actually has a 100% record or good record on human rights. All countries in the world, they are really trying to do their best to do good in human rights area, but that is the position. So Namibia is not really in a bad position. If you look at the ranking, if we have to rank it, probably Namibia will be among the top 20 countries in the world that actually are doing fairly on human rights aspect. But coming back to the office of the Ombudsman, this office has been in existence for 30 years or so. The previous ombudsmen have done good work, particularly the current one. He has joined International Association of Ombudsmen, so he learned a lot from those institutions. But yet, we have not done very well in the area of environment. As you may recall from you people were reporting on sand mining. When you look at those pictures, it's really bad.
Yeah.
I wanted to focus also on that one, equally on the same level as the other two other important areas, like the maladministration and the human rights aspect. Because when you talk about environment, it actually link on all the other rights also. Because if your backyard is actually the grass, every grass is bent, all the trees is cut, the water is poisoned, I don't know how you are going to enjoy your human rights in that situation. So I would want to approach the line ministry of environment because they are the one administering the Environmental Act of 2007. They have an environmental commissioner there, so that we can see how we are going to really work together and put our laws into implementation. The law of Namibia is very, very strong in terms of environmental protection. Maybe what I will focus or emphasize is perhaps to dig deeper and say each and every major multinational companies that are operating here must have an environmental policy so that we see how they are actually protecting the environment. Because you cannot have a major activities and you don't have an environmental policy. Because you will not have a concern about how you handle yourself. So that is my emphasis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You spoke of the human rights aspect. You spoke of the environmental aspect. You also mentioned maladministration. Can you just delve a bit deeper into that? What is it that you're actually referring to?
Yeah, if you look at the mandate of the ombudsman, it's really to investigate the maladministration of the public bodies. Government officials who are actually executing a lot of public service that are they providing to the communities. You must remember that government has a huge bureaucracy. And the public cannot really, individual citizens cannot really maneuver this bureaucracy. Sometimes they are being overlooked, and sometimes the decision that this public officials takes is actually hurting the rights of these people. So these individuals, they have the right to come to our office and complain. And then we will investigate how is it their interest or their right or legitimate expectation has been offended by the decisions of the public bodies. This is the maladministration we are talking about.
Yeah.
It includes the aspect of misappropriation of public funds, which is actually a complicated concept.
Yeah.
Because some think that it should be under the ACC.
Yeah.
But because there is a thin difference there between corruption and misappropriation of public fund. So how do you get to know the difference? We in law, we always use concepts and words. We define them first. If you look at the dictionary, you will find that the meaning of misappropriation of public fund means you are entrusted with something of someone which doesn't belong to you, and then you use it.
Yeah.
That means it is not it's not yours. So you have abused your position. So abuse of position is actually the work of the ombudsman. So that's where I think the lawmakers decided to keep it with the ombudsman. So that is the aspect of public maladministration. The human rights aspect is now horizontal. It's not really vertical, because any human beings in Namibia is guaranteed that right not to be discriminated against and not to violate his right or his dignity. So even a private person, we will investigate that private person who will violate the human rights aspect of another human being, so of another citizen. So that's actually how we will deal with human rights aspect.
Yeah.
So that one is not, you don't just look at the government, it's the only one who must violate your human rights. But private companies can violate your human rights also, and we will go against them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perhaps for the benefit of the public, one would like to know, as a person, what are your personal sentiments around corruption and maladministration, or let's rather put it, the misappropriation of public funds? And where have we gone wrong as a nation in terms of curbing that?
Misappropriation of funds, actually, I will not really have a position today because I have not got that privilege to see the ombudsman's report is how many of these typical cases on misappropriation of fund has he investigated for the past years. So, but in terms of the public service staff rules, it is one of those serious offenses. So what normally happened in the public service, once you have been charged with abuse of your office, in terms of abuse of government properties, like vehicles and funds, for example, there were some of these cases reported in the media. You will be, if you are found guilty by the disciplinary committee, they can recommend for your dismissal, because there are categories of offenses where it warranted dismissal and first warning or final warning or 3 warnings, etc. But that one of misappropriation of public fund and misuse of public government public property like vehicles, that one, once you're found guilty, in terms of the public staff rules, it's a dismissible offense.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What would you say the misappropriation of funds and corruption? Is it a worrying factor that you think would rather require intense efforts, especially from your office, maybe in collaboration with other like-minded institutions in the public sector?
I'm not so sure I get the question correctly or I understand it. Because when you talk about corruption, that one, maybe we must leave it for the director of anti-corruption commission.
That's why I spoke of the misappropriation of funds and the abuse of office, which falls right on your laps.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I really don't have statistics of whether we have a big problem in the public service of misappropriation of funds, because I have not seen the statistics. But nonetheless, if that is the case, or to say that there is such a scenario, then it is something that we need to take up seriously, because then you have people who are busy thinkers. It's not a biblical term. It's people who are thinking before the Constitution was drafted.
Yeah.
Those people should be educated, and if need to be, they must just be shown the door to leave the public service, because public fund is to develop the Namibian society for the benefit of the Namibian society. So we cannot have senior officials or junior officials, for that matter, who just go into public service to benefit themselves. That's actually the bottom line of when you want to enter into public service as a civil servant, you must serve the nation. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe just as we wrap up, would you say that in its current format, the Office of the Ombudsman, does the public get return on their investment into that office?
I think so, yes.
Why do you say so?
I mean, when they go to the Office of the Ombudsman, it's actually now in 5 regions, if I may correctly put it. One in the south, one in the Rongo region, one in the Chozonjupa in the Chorongo area, and one in Oshakati and Katima. So services is getting closer to the people. And when they get there, they get the answers they want. Their cases are attended to, and sometimes satisfactory results to their complaints.
But I'm sure you've also picked up the public sentiment where some feel that perhaps this office is not doing much. I'm sure you've picked that up. Although it's just public sentiment, I know you'll say perhaps it's just that and it's not confirmed, but it exists.
Yeah, I mean, in all areas of companies, there's always somehow improvement that needs to be done to their services. So maybe that's actually something that I will go and have to investigate and see how we can improve that one.
Yeah. Mr. Dyakugha, thank you very much for coming through today.
I
wish you all the best during your tenure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.